What's going on, everybody? Just want to let you know our sponsors going forward for our future episodes. We are sponsored by Red Clover Coffee. So if you go to redclovercoffee.com and type in code IWP at checkout, you'll save 10% site-wide. Also, we are sponsored by Performance Supplements. So if you go over to performancesup with 2ps.com and type in code IWP at checkout, you'll save 15% site-wide. And our third sponsor is we are sponsored by Crunch Fitness up here in Northern California. Thank you, guys. All right, welcome back to another episode, guys, of Intel Within Podcast here. Got a special guest. He is local from Ukraine, born there. And the reason why I decided to get him on the podcast is he reached out to me and was, kind of following along and saw, what I was posting and talking about. And a lot of people don't know the truth. They listen to this propaganda. We agreed to, for one, give him an alias. He's going to go by Eli. And two, not show his face because he still has family over there, and all they need is a picture of you and your name, and anybody can essentially find you. And so out of respect for him and his family and protection, I'm not going to show his face. He has sent me tons of videos and photos as to what's going on, to what social media regularly on, Instagram doesn't show you. They show you a lot, but they don't show you the underlying issues and realistically the truth instead of listening to that propaganda. Okay, so
Absolutely.
he's gonna go over quite a bit of stuff. We're gonna do it in segments, 30-minute episodes here and there, and it's gonna go from start to finish as to him growing up over
Yeah,
there,
feel
what he's
free to
seen.
feel free to chime in too, eh? Yeah.
Yeah, so let's just get into this, and tell us from the beginning, being born over there, if you want to give locations, and what you've
Absolutely.
seen growing up as to how it's affected life now, and then with you actively volunteering over there continuously in Ukraine.
Absolutely. All right. Well, thanks a lot. I really appreciate you giving me the opportunity to share a little bit of my story. I am not a unique story. There's so many people that are also that also have the same story as my family.
Hmm.
I'd say thousands and thousands of people. So I'm just gonna kind of take it from the top here. So basically, how we moved from the Soviet Union to America. So back in 1970, my grandfather, he would go down. Basically, the only way you can leave the country is if you get a letter of permission to leave the Soviet Union. And the only people that were actually able to get these letters of recommendation to leave were basically is if you were part of the Communist Party, or if you were high up, you're a spy or whatever.
Hmm.
So they didn't let families leave the country because it'd make the Soviet Union look bad, because the Soviet Union was making these massive advertisements to show how beautiful their system was and how it worked. But in reality, um, it wasn't all like that. Sure, you had there's a lot of good things and bad things, more bad things than good. The freedom, for example, freedom of expression and freedom of self governance, that was a really never really existed. It's either you do what you're told or you're going to
What
gulags.
year was
People
this?
joke around. This is okay. So this is basically 1970 up to 1988, basically
Okay.
when they actually let people go, right? So when they started letting people go, they already knew that the system has already completely collapsed. And then you had the 90s, they called them bloody 90s, Kров'яные 90. And that's where all of the mafia basically took over the entire country.
Wow.
But anyways, so basically, they wouldn't let him leave. He'd go down there, go down to Moscow. He'd be like, "Hey guys, I'd really like to leave the country. You guys don't like me, I don't like you. Let's make it some fair play and let me leave. I'll be out of your hair and you'll be out of mine." And they're like, "Well, uh, they always say it's good where we don't wherever you're not, that's the best
Hmm.
place to be." So, and to make a long story short, it took around 15 to 17 years, and the only reason why they actually let our families out of the Soviet Union, out of Ukraine, was because the system has already collapsed, and they knew that, hey, you might as well let these people leave. and look like we're really good being the good guys, when in reality there was just nothing left to keep the
Of
system
course.
together. um, I do recall telling you to, there was a really great explanation for the Soviet Union and how it was functioned. There's a gentleman by the name of Yuri Maltsov. If you
Mm-hmm.
look him up on YouTube, he's got excellent lectures, just beautiful. He himself was actually an economist that worked in the Soviet Union in Moscow for the Soviet government. And he can take that apart a little bit better. But anyways, so another huge negative aspect of living in the Soviet Union was, if you're a Christian, you would be heavily persecuted, and you'd be persecuted to a point where basically, if they find out you're a Christian and you're going to church and you're making church gatherings, well, guess what would happen? They would come, arrest you, arrest everybody that was there. They'd put you into jail. If you were a Muslim, same thing actually. I'm sorry, I'm going to say, so basically, if you're a Muslim or a Christian, they would the government would come to you and say, hey, listen, we'll allow you to do your services, but you're not allowed to have any youth at your church. And the point of that was just basically they wanted the religion to die out
Yep.
completely.
Not passing the next generation.
So yeah, exactly. So but it never happened. Like, it never happened that way.
Mm-hmm.
The youth would still come, they'd still learn the gospel, they'd still learn the truth, and it would continue either way. And they knew they had no control over it. So the only way to scare people into, stop going to church or whatever, they would, they'd persecute them. There's lots of people that were tortured. There's people that had been jailed, sent off to the gulags for, 15, 20 years just because they preached the gospel,
That's crazy.
Yeah, it's surreal because, like, you're where we grew up here in America, and we think like, oh, that would never happen here. Well,
Right.
the truth of the matter is, it doesn't take much for it to happen here too. I mean, like, look at the past 2 years. We had people ratting each other out because they weren't wearing a mask. And
Right.
and Soviet Union times, same thing. Your neighbor would rat you out that you went to church, and at the end of the day, or the next day when you went to work, even your boss at work would say, "Hey, so you're a Christian, right?" And you'd be like, "Well, yeah, I am." And then he's like, "Well, guess what? We don't need your services anymore. You get kicked out of work." And, like, again, I'm not making this up. I highly would recommend people not believe what I say, but seek out people from ex-communist, ex-Soviet countries and talk to them about their personal experience. Now, not everybody's going to have the same experience, but everybody will agree to the fact that Christians were heavily persecuted. So I was telling you a story about my grandfather. He was going down to Moscow for like 15, 17 years.
This story is very
And
interesting.
basically, what would happen is the KGB would follow him home. They'd follow him to his house, follow him at work, and everybody knew that he was being followed because he wouldn't just ask for his own family to be able to leave the Soviet Union, but
Mm-hmm.
other people's families too. So he'd go down to Moscow with this thick stack of papers and letters of all these people that want to leave. So one day he was due for a checkup because he had asthma, and they basically told him at the hospital, they're like, "Okay, when you get home," his name was Eli also. He's like, "When you get home, make sure you take your medication." And they give him this medication, like, "Take this medication when you get home, right away. Drink a glass of water and go to sleep."
So why? I
So,
mean,
anyways,
why did they have him do that? Like, why? What was the medication for, supposedly?
well, they were sick and tired of him coming with. Well, it's like, so here's the thing.
Mm-hmm.
They were sick and tired of him, and not just him, but many other people that would come to Moscow and ask for permission to leave the country,
Mm-hmm.
because obviously that would make them look very bad. But anyways, so they've wanted to kill him basically. So anyway,
Right.
so he got home and he threw the pills into the garbage. And when he got home, he noticed there was already an ambulance standing outside the house, just down the street a little bit further away from them. And it kind of clicked right away. He's like, "They're trying to kill me." So anyway, so he hid in the attic, and the medics came into the house, and they're like, "Oh, we got a call." And where's Eli? We got a call that Eli's feeling sick. And they're like, oh, he didn't come home. And they're like, oh, really? What do you mean he didn't come home? He's supposed to be home. And it was like, how did these people know that my grandfather was already supposed to be home
Mm-hmm.
unless this was already like pre what's it called?
Premeditated.
Premeditated, right?
Yeah.
So, anyways, long story short, they ended up leaving. They figured out that he figured out that they're trying to kill him.
That's crazy.
Another guy, which was his an acquaintance of my grandfather, he got hit by a car magically. Got hit by a car in obviously broad daylight. He got hit by a car and he survived, but there's other people that also they'd be driving their cars and they'd be rammed off the road magically by a transport truck or whatever. And again, this is not like just happened with my family. This has happened with many other people. It just like I said, I recommend people talk to people from the ex-Soviet countries.
Surprised they didn't drown like the Clintons and the Obamas with all their people.
Well, they're a little more creative. They'll ram you off the road, or they will poison you. So
yeah,
that was basically the KGB way of getting rid of somebody that was a pain in the ass to them. So, but anyways, my uncle, same story with him. They were spying on him because they thought that he was a spy for the United States, and they lived in an apartment building. And one day, my aunt was home, and she looks like on the table, and there's a pile of sand on the table, and she's like, "What the heck? Where did this come from?" She looks up, and they drilled from the second floor into their apartment. They're trying to put a mic down into the house.
Jesus.
So yeah. So anyway, so they found that out. Another thing that happened to their family was they had this vine growing on the side of the house. And one day my aunt's walking to back home, and she looks and she's like, that's weird. She's like, the plant exactly where their window was like completely dead. Like the leaves were, when you leave a plant out in the hot summer heat,
I've
and
killed many a plant.
Wilt. And that's exactly the entire side of the house was just all wilted. The other side of the apartment, the other side was fine. So they kind of figured, they're trying to put some kind of gas into the house and gas everybody to death or something. So
wow.
But again, that's not the only story. There's so many other people that have the same stories. It's just mind blowing. So I'm gonna keep moving on here. So basically, if you're not a member of the Communist Party, it'd be hard to get a job or a secondary education, such as a college degree of some sort, or to become a doctor, some sort of university. It'd be really, really tough, next to impossible. So a lot of Christians that were living in the Soviet Union, they never got a chance to get a higher education. They would get like transport truck driver's license or something of the sort, like lower class jobs. Another thing is, you hear this all the time, like, oh, the Soviet Union is wonderful. Everybody got a free home. I was like, yeah, not everybody got a free home, but everybody keeps forgetting about all of the properties that were confiscated from the people that already had homes, people already that had little, they already had their own the properties. They were confiscated by the Soviets and kind of screwed over that way. So,
and what's that time frame? Is that still like in the 90s into the early 2000s or earlier?
Okay, so the confiscation happened in the early basically early 1900s. So right after the Bolshevik Revolution, the big thing was the farmer was evil. That the farmers basically were making everybody else starve. They were not. They only cared about themselves. They were selfish, and so on and so forth. Also, another great example of how they waged war on the farmers was the Holodomor. People say, well, it happened of natural causes. No, there was no natural causes. It was a literally artificial starvation because the people of Poltava, like the northern part of Ukraine, they did not want anything to do with the Soviets because they knew they're evil. Oh, and by the way, the first thing they did was they came into Ukraine, the Soviets in 1919. They came in, they took away all the guns. They took away everything that people could fight back with. That's one of
Like
the first
Hitler.
things that the Soviets did. Yeah, exactly. So as soon as that was out of the picture, then they came in and they did whatever they wanted. Um, so yeah, that was like so the Holodomor was 1934 or 1935, if I'm not mistaken. So yeah, I mean, man, they starved like
And wasn't
there's
sorry, wasn't the in 1919 too? I remember you showing me. I didn't know it until you showed me, and I looked it up. And because me, like I love to research, and I like to pull from multiple articles and not just get I want to get like a consensus. So I remember you showing me and telling me what I'm about to say is that back in 1919, um, the Soviet Union, they had those armbands with the swastika and the stars
yep,
around it. So they had that back then
yep.
in 1919, and them trying to disarm, the community essentially just rolls right into what happened with Hitler in World War II and all that. Like, how do
Yeah,
you make a society weak and take their rights on you freaking de-arm them, and then now you own
yeah,
everybody. So go ahead. Yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, basically it was this. What does Nazi stand for? National Socialist, right?
Hmm.
Who was the Soviet Union? They were socialists. They were communists, right? The exact same two ideologies, pretty much exactly the same. One was a nationalist, socialist. The other one was basically, I would classify them as just straight up communist, where there was central planning and the state ran everything.
Hmm.
Um, it was illegal for you if you tried to make you have your own little factory or whatever. You'd go to jail. You just go to the right to the gulag, because that was a huge sin, a huge law breaking. I don't even have the right vocabulary to um, say what I want to say here. But anyways, so moving along. So after the Holodomor, 1935, 1934, they starved all these people. They all died. Another thing that happened when the Soviets took over Ukraine was the regions that we know as today, Donbass, Mariupol area, uh, Kharkiv, where they say, "Oh, there's a lot of Russians living there." Yes, there is a lot of Russians living there. That's because the Soviets, what they did was they displaced hundreds and thousands, maybe even millions of people from one area to another area. Uh, that's what Nebuchadnezzar did. That's what the Persians did. That's what the Mongols did. They would take an entire group of people, move them out of their land where they lived, and put in and settle in different people. So that's why on that side of Ukraine you have all of these people that speak Russian and that are Russian. Now, if you were to go right now this day to Siberia, which is way on the other side of Russia,
Right.
okay, you will find people with last names as Chuck, which are Ukrainian last names and Polish last names, because what the Soviets did was they sent out hundreds and thousands of Polish, of Ukrainians, of Moldavians, Romanians, Bulgarians, and Czechs, and so on and so forth. They sent hundreds and millions of people out to that side.
Hmm.
Talk to people, even talk to again. Don't take my word for it. Talk to people from Poland. Talk to Polish people. Ask them, hey, has your grandparents experienced persecution of the Soviet Union when they were growing up? And they'll tell you, yeah, my grandmother was sent to Siberia for what? Because she was Polish? No, they were just basically displacing those people from one side to another, just to mix it up so that these people have no sense of identity. Because it's like, what gives a person identity? It's not just that you live on a piece of land. It's your history, your roots. There's so much that gives you identity, and it gives you a sense of purpose in life. When you
Hmm.
don't know who you are, it's even harder to find your purpose, right? So
Right.
that's basically that in a nutshell. Anyway, so 1988, finally, a lot of families were given the permission to leave the country, and everybody that left, nobody has ever looked back, because there's just so much pain that they've went through to leave. And it's like, would you want to go back to a place that was constantly persecuting you and abusing you? Probably not.
Right.
You know. So, um, I know we got probably like what 10 minutes left.
Yeah, we'll go over it. Just so we can break up the episodes. But um,
Yeah.
so like after all that happened, how was life over there in Ukraine afterwards? Like into the '90s, early 2000s.
Oh, it was horrendous.
Okay.
Horrendous. There was so much mafia, so much theft, and so much murder and bloodshed. It was literally, it basically like the beginning of. So when America started turning into America, right?
Hmm.
You had the cowboys, you had the Wild West. That's
Right.
exactly what it was. That's basically the '90s in Ukraine, the '90s in Russia, Moldova, Romania. I'd say the same thing for them. Belarus, the same thing. It was not safe. It was not a safe place. I mean, if you look like you got money, chances are you're gonna get someone. Someone might come after you. Big chance someone's gonna come after you.
So what like really prompted so kind of like fast forwarding and not trying to knock off like every decade, but so like
Yeah, it's okay.
so going forward so people can kind of understand, whether they have read a history book or not, coming from you being over there, born and, I say it all the time, but like boots on the ground in Ukraine, like
Yeah.
what is the end so people just understand, like kind of fast forward and be a little bit more concurrent, like what is
What is the
this?
spirit of the people?
Yeah, like how are they how are they now? And I don't mean now in the sense of like because Russia invading, but
Yeah.
before this invasion,
So
I know they've had that clash in 2014. So like, how
yeah.
is that over there?
So basically, the Ukrainian people as a whole, they're. I would say this. So basically, from the '90s and on to, I'd say, the early 2000s up to probably 2010, the biggest difference I've seen in the quality of life was probably from 2005 up to current date. Like the
Okay.
past, I'd say 10 years, it just skyrocketed. The people of Ukraine as a whole, I mean, it's like going back. It's like, would you ever want to go back to being a slave for somebody? No,
Right.
I highly doubt it. The mentality, the reason why there's so much corruption, and the people that are still kind of like their mind is so set back where they think that, hey, uh, you know, they find it's okay for them to, rob people, on the, I'd say, the government level.
Hmm.
Those are the people that still have the old Soviet mindset where, again, alluding back to Yuri Maltsov, if you listen to his lecture on the Soviet Union and what held it together, you'll understand why the people who are still corrupt, they have a corrupt mindset, why they're like that. It's like you had nothing, all of a sudden you figure out that there's a way to get endless money, and nobody's going to stop you because you have the power in your hand to put him in jail or to keep yourself out of jail, right? Uh,
Are these people
uh,
like
if
threatened?
you take,
Like when they, because they say
oh,
money is the
oh,
root of all evil, and is it like propaganda? Is it just, hey, if you don't do this, we're gonna X your family? Like, how does that work?
well, it's like this. So here's okay. We'll go back to the '90s. So in the
Hmm.
'90s, everything was for sale, right? You had a huge amount of people selling everything, government property like crazy all around the world. One thing you've heard of, like in Russia, the biggest thing was Soviet weapons. They were selling Kalashnikovs, weapons, and whatnot. Well, that's not the only thing that was for sale. There was other things for sale too, like steel, like different metals. Ukraine has a huge titanium industry. Russia has a huge metallurgy industry. They
Hmm.
have oil, they have gas, they have everything. So check this out. You're a mobster in the '90s. You take over a manufacturing facility that produces aluminum, for example, right? You got everything illegally. You got everything by killing people off, this and that. What happens eventually? It kind of clicks that, hey, living this kind of lifestyle under watching your back is not the smartest thing, and you are not going to live a very long time if that's what you decide your lifestyle is going to be. So they started building legal businesses, and what they did was they took this black money and turned it into white money by creating different businesses, opening up little stores, opening up shops, opening up other factories. And what happens is now you have a legal business that's making you lots of money, and your mentality finally changes where you're like, well, you know what, this is actually much better and safer. So now what are you going to do? You're going to start trying to enforce the law more, and you're going to try to make better laws for the country because you don't want to go back 25 years where you're watching your back and sleeping, in your bathtub just in case somebody sets a bomb off in your house.
Right.
If you do a little bit of research of the 90s in Russia and Ukraine, you'll come across story after story where every night, there's people getting shot to death every single night. Why? Because these people would just be stealing from each other constantly. Now, is there corruption in Ukraine? Yes, there is. There's no doubt about it. There's corruption in Ukraine. What's happened in the past 10 years? Well, guess what? People started to realize that this is not such a great thing, and you end up looking like a total fool on the global stage. So there are people, like for example, one of the biggest things I'll tell you right now. I'm pretty sure you've noticed I have not used the word Russia too much, but I'm going to say this: on the west side of Ukraine, if you take a map of Ukraine, okay, you split it right down in the middle, pretty much. On the west side of Ukraine, all of those regions were more Western backed. On the east side, they're a lot more Russian backed. And if you were to travel from the west side to the east side, you will see a huge difference in infrastructure, in buildings, in businesses, in everything. Why? Because the people that are on the west side of Ukraine have gone to Germany, they've gone to Poland, they have gone to these European Union backed countries, and they have
Mhm.
seen what law and order can do and what it can accomplish for an entire nation.
Better
So these
quality.
people would, yeah, oh, absolutely,
Yeah.
100%. You know, and these people, they realize, like, hey, listen, if we become more like Europe, we don't need to go to Europe. We'll have Europe in our own country. If you go to the other side of Ukraine, which I was on both sides, it it's very sad. It's so sad to see so much potential go to crap. It's just mind blowing. Now, if you take the demographic of Ukraine as a whole, for the most part, how do people survive there? They're not reliant on a system per se. They're not reliant like we here in America are reliant on going to Walmart or going to Home Depot or going. People are self-reliant in Ukraine. They have their 1 acre of land or half acre of land where they grow their food. They'll have a couple of chickens. They're self-sufficient.
Right.
That's one thing that people are just starting to realize in America. The past 3 years, we just started to realize, like, oh my goodness, you know what? I need to be self-reliant. In Ukraine, they're already like that because that's the only way for them to survive. The west side of Ukraine, and you're not going to hear it just from me because I'm Ukrainian and I'm from the west side, but it's because that I've seen both sides.
Right.
People are very hardworking. As a whole, the Ukrainian people, the Slavic people are hardworking people. As a matter of fact, there's a reason why they call them the Slavs. It's it comes from the word slave, and you can do a little bit of research yourself, and you realize that, hey, this is the Slavic nation is a bunch of slaves, or were slaves. Sorry. So, anyways, 2014 rolled around. I'm gonna make this real short
Yeah.
here. 2014 rolled around, right? You had Yanukovych as the president. He sold out Crimea. Magically, he escaped and nobody touched him. Now he's currently living in, I believe it's in, oh, man, what's that place? Sochi. I think it's Sochi or something like that. It's one of these Russian, more tropical cities. But anyways, this guy managed to leave the country unscathed, not touched by anything,
Wow.
and it just goes to show the guy sold out the entire island. The Donetsk region. I'm not going to get too much into it, but here's the thing: I want all your listeners to use logic. Okay, Ukraine pretty much has had no military since of 2005 because of the systematic degradation, purposeful systematic
Jeez.
degradation by the Russian government. And
Hmm.
how do we know this? I highly recommend you Google Chernobyl military radiation. So military graveyard Chernobyl. If you look at there's maps, there's pictures you can see that on a span of 15 years from 2000 to 2010, everything has been completely taken out of there. Where is all this stuff? Well, it's one I'm pretty sure your listeners know is that military grade steel is very expensive. Well,
Oh
all
yeah.
that stuff is gone. Where did it go? In 2014, when United States, Kazakhstan, Russia, and England signed the Budapest Memorandum, they were told basically to get rid of 2,000 nukes and a whole bunch of bombers and supersonic jets and a whole bunch of other military hardware. Ukraine literally had no military up until 2014 when the United States started to give them arms. I want all your listeners to know this. Why would a weak country with nothing to prove, literally 90% a bunch of hillbilly farmers, all right, that all they do is they farm grain or soy or whatever. Why would they, that have no military, they have pretty much zero military, why would they attack a nuclear superpower with, I don't know, what is it, 4,000 nuclear missiles, 40 nuclear high-tech submarines and jets and all this? Why? Like, where is the logic? There is no logic.
Correct.
You have to be insane. And people, I hear this all the time. People are like, well, Russia didn't start this war, Ukraine and Nazis and this and that. No, Ukraine never started this war because they don't have the need for it. One, what do they get out of this? Well, like you can say that they're being puppets or whatever. Yes and no. I give it a little bit of weight, but all in all, Ukraine has absolutely no reason to attack a nuclear superpower. Even more so that they have nothing to defend themselves with.
Yeah,
You
they don't
know,
want this war.
no, nobody wants this war.
Yeah.
Every time you go there, people are like, when is this stupid thing going to be over?
Hmm.
I guess I'll leave people with this last thing. I get the latest thing right now on social media is there's videos coming out where people are walking around under a peaceful sky, and they're going to a grocery store. There's
I've seen
everything's
that.
in the
Hmm.
grocery stores. Well, I'd like you to pull a map out of Ukraine and or better so, just go to the map. There's a map you can get on Google. It's called Ukraine Interactive Map, War Map. It's a map where it gives you a live update of where the war front is. Um, and it shows you basically in red, basically where there's bombings happening and all this other stuff. And if you look at this map, you don't need to be a rocket scientist or need a PhD to understand that 99.9% of these videos are all coming from areas where there is no war going on. Ukraine is pretty big. It's a pretty big country. It's one of the largest bodies uh, of real estate in Eastern Europe, besides Russia and the other places. But people have gotten used to the fact that they're living in a war and they have no choice. They have what are they going to do? Hide in their bunker till the war's over?
Right, right, right. They got to get
What
food.
yeah, exactly. What logic is that? The entire economy is going to stop overnight? No, the people are still going to be buying and selling. That's just the way it is. They have no choice. They're doing whatever they can with what they have. End of story. So right now, I mean, whenever there is a missile going off, people get they'll get a notification on their phone and the sirens in the city will go off. Basically, what that does is just gives people time to prepare themselves if they want to go and hide in a bunker or something. Nobody, I'm not saying nobody. There are people that still go hide in the bunkers, but people just realize that, you know, what are they going to do? Like, they're going to go hide in the bunker. What if the missile hits the bunker? What if the missile hits somewhere else? Like, it's just so hard to kind of like figure out, When
Right.
I was in Nikolaev, which is right beside, or it's Zaporizhia area where the nuclear power stations are, uh, the locals there were telling us basically, it's called Marhanse. They're telling us basically every night the Russians will get drunk and they'll just start firing missiles off randomly. And they're not really aiming at anything. They're just firing missiles because they're drunk and they're trying to, keep the locals losing their minds,
Right.
which is also, I guess, a good tactic on their behalf. But still, it's just so ridiculously stupid. So,
Yeah, I've seen the video that you sent me too, and that people like the sirens going off, and you can hear it clear as day because it's loud as shit. But people are
yeah,
walking. You've got women walking by
because they're
themselves,
used to
don't
it.
even care. Yeah, because like they're still gonna go to the grocery store. They're still got to go to work. They just live day to day because it's the norm over there. And it's just
Yeah, they've gotten used to it.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Oh,
yeah. So we're gonna we'll do episode 1 right here. I think this is pretty good from like start some history into what kind of like concurrent and what's going on now.
yeah.
And then we'll kind of dive into episode 2 a little bit more and just kind of get your your thoughts and more truth behind what's actually going over there. What are the plans, potentially from both sides, and where you see this war and where you see this war going. And whether people want to think about it or not, like, essentially like Putin's end game or Russia's end game, or what could happen. We could talk a little bit more about that map, if I remember, of you showing me a long time ago, or the map a while ago, of like how Russia goes from this down to this, and how the West moves way
Yeah.
over. I think you remember the photo, so we can talk
Yeah.
a little bit
There's
about that. So
it'd be really good if I were to find that video. There's a old video from like
mhm.
1940, 1945, made by the US government of how they were planning to take split the body of land, split Russia up into several different parts. And that's basically, it reminded me, that map that I sent to you, it reminded
Mhm.
me of that video. But for the life of me, I can't find it. I tried looking for it. It might be on BitChute,
Mhm.
uh but it's really something. Like they were already planning
Planning it.
to saw it apart into pieces. So, oh, by the way, did you know that the United States sent back in during World War II? The United States provided the Soviet Union with over $3-4 billion worth of aid to defeat Hitler.
So I did not know the number on it, but I know that we did provide stuff to Russia as like I don't know if the correct verbiage would be like ally in that sense, but to like use them to defeat Hitler. I do remember that, but I did not know the amount was that high, and I would have to look up like all the resources if I want to like kind of like go down a rabbit hole into it. But I do
Yeah,
vaguely
so
remember
19,
us
yeah,
supplying them.
19, yeah, 19. I just googled it. 1941 to 1945, the U.S. sent $11.3 billion, or
Jesus.
180 billion in 2016 dollars. So one thing I know a lot of Russians are so proud of, they're like, "Oh, we defeated Hitler." Yeah, you would defeat nothing if the United States never helped you.
Yeah, and that's
So
another story that I would like to talk about that too. I mean,
yeah,
for the future episodes, but um, yeah, that was good, man. It's very interesting, and you know, you're very knowledgeable on this. For one, being over there, two, constantly going back and forth and volunteering, and doing your part to help your people back there. And I've seen some of the pictures, and I mean, it's awesome. And
yeah,
kudos to everybody that you know helps out for the good, and what you've shown me of people coming from the states or whatever other countries going onto the front lines over there to do their thing
yeah,
to stop Russia advancing. So we'll
yeah.
stop it here for part 1, and then we will schedule out part 2 for everybody. I hope the viewers and the listeners, whatever. I hope you guys enjoy this one. It's just, kind of like a drop in the bucket of what we're going to kind of talk about while I have Eli here under his alias, of course, to really show the truth and spread what is going on, so that way everybody fully understands and there's no left, right. It's just this is the truth and this is what it is. And again, the stuff that he has talked about, you could simply just go Google it yourself. People don't want to do the work, but that's unfortunately when you don't want to do the work, then you're going to listen to propaganda. You're going to listen to the news. Like, you're not going to listen to people that have been there, have been through it, and that fully understand the history.
One thing I just want to say, one thing is, growing up in the States and just, listening to CNN and all these other news. I'm not saying it's just CNN, but there's just so much information coming out. One thing that I can proudly say is this: like, I was at one point convinced that there's that this liberal mindset was correct. Like, if you're not on board, then you're an idiot.
Right.
What differentiates an intelligent person from a fool is that you can admit to yourself that you're wrong and change your position. That doesn't mean that you're an idiot. It means that you're smart and you can take information in, chew it over, do a little bit of research, and be like, hey, you know what? I changed my position. There's nothing wrong with changing your position on a certain subject or questioning things. Absolutely. It's just that a lot of times, especially when people have like these arguments and debates, they think, hey, if I change my mind, then I'm an idiot. No, it doesn't mean you're an idiot. It just means that you can process information, and you're only an intelligent person can do that. There's no need to be angry and upset over it.
Correct.
There's no need to argue with the person. Just take it in, listen to it, go do your own research, and make up your mind. That's it.
I agree. I wish more people would do that, man. It's just, I don't know if you've seen the comments on some of the posts, but it's just wild to me, like, how far people are like in this tunnel vision. And that's a whole nother segment. I just feel bad for people. They just don't want to. They don't want to do it, man. It's just like, you can only help them so far. You can only spoon feed them, So.
But, absolutely. And again, at the end of the day, it's you're not gonna. I'm not here. I'm not trying to convince anybody of my experience. Correct. Because I know I can't do that. I'm just sharing my experience that I know is truth. Like, my grandparents don't have a reason to lie to me about what happened to them.
Of course.
Like, it's just stupid. I'm not getting paid. I don't need somebody to pay me to tell my story. Mm-hmm. I'm saying this because there's so much happening, and people just whatever they hear, they think it's automatic truth. For goodness sakes, people. There's so many people getting killed right now. Nobody wants this war. No Ukrainian in his right mind wants to be killing somebody else right now. Zero. Mm-hmm. Zero. So, anyways.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate it, brother. It all started with you just reaching out and being like, hey, like, let me show you the truth. And
hey, you want to come to Ukraine?
Dude, I told you, bro. I totally would, man. So many
if there is somebody with like a good viewership, man, reach out, man. Reach out to this gentleman here. I could get you to the front line if you wanted to go to the front line. Man, I have friends that are going out to the front line on a weekly basis, doing just like I sent pictures of my two buddies. They're dentists. They're going out there fixing people's teeth, and around the corner there's like artillery going off. So if somebody really wants to see if there's a war and still thinks it's CGI, please reach out.
I'll get you guys in contact with him. I promise. He has sent me countless pictures, and I've seen them. And things are happening on the daily. So, man, I appreciate you coming on and working this out, because I know you just, you're busy and recently got back from doing your thing over there. And I know that, you're going back out because you're very avid in this. So, so that was, again, man, I appreciate you coming on and giving your time here.
No problem.
So we're going to space these out. I'm excited for it. I really looking forward to people understanding what's actually going on and hearing the truth. So for everybody out there, if you want to get in contact with me, And if you know somebody that, has a story on something like this or wants to touch base, email me at kbpodcast123@gmail.com. Other than that, you've got all my socials, the Instagram, the Facebook, the Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and now YouTube. Intel Within Podcast. This was the episode with Untold Truths from Ukraine. So look forward to part 2, and I will post that on social media for you guys. Appreciate it.